Life is meant to be difficult. I think that's something that we forget, especially in the modern age, where it feels like things like difficulty and hardship often fly under the radar because they aren't acknowledged. And they're very opposite, which looks like glamour and success and joy, happiness. We don't often get to see the real hardship that went into those things. And so what that does over time is it teaches us that perhaps we shouldn't be feeling hardship because it's not what other people feel. But if we don't get to see their true experience, how could we know that those judgments about whether or not we should be feeling hardship are even justified? So what happens is when we don't get to see the full extent of what everyone else goes through, we start to impose the idea on ourselves that we are the odd ones out, that we are the one with the problem, a problem which doesn't apply to everyone else. But in reality, this is far from the truth. Other people experience hardship just as much as you, but you don't get to see it. You only get to see your experience. And you get to hear other people talking about what they've been through. But even that doesn't fully resonate sometimes. You know, I was on YouTube maybe a couple weeks ago, looking at videos about people talking about how life is difficult. And you often get people like Jordan Peterson popping up, perhaps some philosophers, perhaps some gurus, and amongst that, ordinary people too. But I find it still difficult to connect with those videos, because you go into those videos looking to bridge the gap between what you're experiencing and someone else, so you can feel less isolated and better about your situation, and validate what you're going through. Because often what happens is we experience something, and it's unpleasant, and we try and find somebody else who's been through something similar to not only validate what we're going through, but to possibly find a solution from somebody else who has been there. But sometimes that's just simply difficult to do. You can watch tons of these videos, you can go to all these forums and read all these books, but I feel the fundamental experience of being human is isolating in itself. And even if you manage to feel connected to what somebody's saying, and you finally feel like somebody's speaking the words which resonate the most to your situation, that sensation of connection may only last for a small amount of time before you start feeling isolated again and looking to build more bridges to other people who have experienced the same thing. Because being human is a never-ending cascade of issues which feel isolating, and we can't quite feel the connection on those deeper levels that we need to build those bridges out of those isolating places. Then you could say, alright, maybe you shouldn't be relying on one-way content. And when I say one-way content, I mean somebody talking at you through a screen, like right now, or reading a book. It's just somebody giving you information, but you can't get anything back. It's not going to be a two-way flow. And sometimes for those deeper bridges to be built, that's what's simply required. Because the person talking on the other end, on YouTube or whatever, is not going to fully understand your situation. They're going to be sending more of a buckshot approach out to the audience in terms of what they're saying, which is a generalization. Because often there are specifics about your situation in terms of all of the thoughts that are going past, which make your situation unique. Because after all, everyone experiences hardship in different ways, depending on the way that they're thinking about it. And so this goes right down to the microscopic level, where I think the relationship with each one of your thoughts becomes important too. At the end of the day, we feel our most isolated when we have the most disruptive relationship with our thoughts. Because if that's the case, then we have created a fissure between ourselves and the thing that is closest to us, and that is our mind. Our thoughts appear right here. Whenever we see them, they are directly in front of us. And if we have any kind of difficulty in that relationship, then we are going to fundamentally feel the most disconnected from everything. So I think that's a bit of a necessary tangent. But going back to the main topic, suffering is necessary, I think we simply have to learn to be okay with being isolated within ourselves. Even though it's so difficult, I think that is the potential breeding grounds for the best progress that we can achieve. Because it's in those moments that we are establishing our relationship with the core of ourselves and And it gives us an opportunity to create agency in ourselves where it simply wasn't possible before the hardship. Hardship is the predecessor to growth and to feel as though that you are leveling up within yourself. Because on another side note, an incredible amount of meaning is derived from the way that we approach our hardships. It's just an unfortunate reality that hardship is one of the biggest catalysts for meaning in a human being. There's a fantastic book by Viktor Frankl called Man's Search for Meaning, and this man was a Holocaust survivor and somehow found meaning from obviously one of the worst possible situations a human being could be in. And although that is on one of the extreme ends of the spectrum, we can take a leaf out of that book and apply it to some of the smaller hardships that we go through every day. Now, the belief that we shouldn't be struggling is one that I've, for some reason, been carrying for some time. And the problem with this is that it's a dehumanization. It's in our very nature to struggle, so why should I think that I shouldn't be? As I said before, we may think that struggling doesn't really exist in the world as much as we think it does, because we simply don't see it portrayed in the raw nature that we feel it from within. It's simply too difficult to understand the struggle that we see in the world unless we've experienced it ourselves to some degree. But yes, also because struggling, especially in social media, isn't trending. It simply doesn't pertain to the thematic highlight reel that we see on things like Instagram and TikTok and whatnot. So in that way, we end up invalidating our own suffering, our own issues. And if we're telling ourselves that we shouldn't be having these natural human occurrences, then I think we're in some serious trouble. Because the next thing is to start avoiding having hardship. And that is basically impossible. Even the highest spiritually trained people in the world, monks who are sitting in monasteries all day, they still suffer, but they have just trained themselves to deal with it so well. All walks of life experience hardship. And what's difficult is we don't have a direct reference to other people most of the time, other than our closer people in our life, to know the extent to which people really are suffering. And it's difficult to draw that back to our experience. So again, we're just looking at all the ways that we isolate ourselves within our own shell, and that hardship is just a necessary component to the human condition, and also just being a living creature, if we're really honest. But one of the main goals of this video is to once again normalize hardship and to remind everyone that we all experience hardship, because it's easy to forget that, I think, in this modern day and age. And it really sucks to feel like the world's going in a direction where we are kind of all being thrown into ourselves more, if that makes sense. We are becoming more inward and hiding the reality and unable to be transparent about basic human issues, which would actually unify us and bring a heck of a lot of meaning for us as a collective. But we think maybe because people around us aren't talking about issues much, it's like we've all created a silent agreement where we are less willing, I'm not going to say completely unwilling, but less willing to be transparent about what we're going through because it feels maybe less comfortable than ever before. It's funny because from recent decades, maybe 30 years ago, being transparent about what we're going through has gotten so much better. It's literally just gone upwards. But I think recent years have brought it downwards again because of false realities depicted by social media. So you'll notice that this video is a little bit all over the place, and that's because there are so many different tangents that can be made from the baseline topic that suffering is necessary. So if you're very caught up in yourself and you're feeling quite isolated and you don't want to talk with anybody about it, I fully understand that. It's a good thing to normalize it and understand that we, I think, as a collective have been dehumanizing it and bring it back into conversation. I think that would be a serious unification. So to wrap this up, you're not alone. We're all in this weird human experience just trying to figure it out together. Chances are you're probably doing a lot better than you think you are.